Most people spend their lives waiting for a feeling to arrive. They call it motivation, as though it was some noble visitor that comes unannounced and grants them the power to become who they wish to be. They wait for the perfect morning, the perfect mood, the perfect surge of inspiration. Yet the strange truth is that the most meaningful changes in a person's life are rarely born from such moments. They emerge from ordinary days, from quiet decisions, from actions taken when enthusiasm is absent and comfort is calling. There is something deeply deceptive about motivation. It promises movement but often leaves us standing still, always expecting tomorrow to provide what today did not. We convince ourselves that if we could only feel more inspired, more energized, more certain, then discipline would follow naturally. But history, experience, and human nature tell a different story. The people who build strong lives are not those who feel ready every day. They are those who have learned to act regardless of how they feel. And so the question before us is not whether we can find more motivation, but whether we can develop something far more reliable. Something that remains when excitement fades, when distractions multiply, and when the path becomes difficult. There is a curious habit in human nature that persuades us to place our hopes in feelings rather than in choices. We often speak of motivation as though it were a trusted companion, a force that arrives at the proper hour and carries us effortlessly toward our goals. We wait for it before beginning difficult work. We look for it before making changes. We depend upon it to give us courage, energy, and direction. Yet anyone who has lived long enough discovers that motivation is one of the least dependable guides a person can follow. The difficulty is not that motivation is bad. It can be a wonderful thing. There are moments when enthusiasm fills the mind, when purpose seems clear, and when every task feels lighter than it truly is. During such times, effort appears almost effortless. A person can wake early, work hard, and pursue worthy aims with remarkable energy. The problem is that these moments are visitors, not residents. They come and go according to rhythms we do not fully understand. To build a life upon them is much like building a house upon the movement of the wind. Most people recognize this pattern but rarely question it. They imagine that successful individuals possess an endless supply of motivation, some hidden reservoir unavailable to ordinary people. They look at accomplished men and women and assume that these individuals must feel inspired more often than everyone else. Yet the truth is usually far less dramatic. The difference is not that disciplined people always feel motivated. The difference is that they have learned not to depend upon motivation. Feelings are excellent servants but poor masters. They change with circumstances. A sleepless night can diminish them. A minor disappointment can weaken them. A difficult conversation can cause them to disappear entirely. If our actions depend upon feeling motivated, then our actions will be as unstable as our emotions. One day we move forward with confidence, and the next we remain motionless for reasons we can scarcely explain. Imagine a sailor crossing a vast sea. If he altered his course every time the wind shifted direction, he would never reach his destination. The very nature of a journey requires something steadier than changing conditions. In much the same way, the journey of personal growth requires something steadier than changing emotions. Human beings often forget this because feelings are immediate while principles require commitment. Feelings demand little effort, commitment demands much. There is also a subtle comfort in depending upon motivation. When motivation is absent, we feel excused from action. We tell ourselves that we are simply waiting for the right moment. We postpone difficult tasks until tomorrow, believing tomorrow will somehow provide the enthusiasm that today withheld. Yet tomorrow often arrives carrying the same excuses as yesterday. Days become weeks, weeks become months, and progress remains forever just beyond reach. Discipline operates according to a different logic. It does not ask whether a person feels ready. It asks whether the action is necessary. It does not negotiate with moods or seek permission from emotions. It recognizes that worthwhile things are often accomplished in ordinary moments, when excitement is nowhere to be found. Discipline understands that action itself frequently creates the very motivation people were waiting for. This is one of the great paradoxes of human behavior. We assume motivation produces action, yet many times action produces motivation. A writer begins with reluctance and discovers momentum after a single page. A student starts studying without enthusiasm and finds concentration growing with each passing minute. A person who exercises despite resistance often experiences energy only after beginning. The feeling arrives because the action came first, not the other way around. The remarkable power of discipline lies in its independence from circumstance. It allows a person to continue moving when emotions fluctuate, when conditions become inconvenient, and when progress appears slow. It transforms achievement from a matter of inspiration into a matter of practice. What is unreliable becomes reliable. What is occasional becomes consistent. What once depended upon a passing feeling becomes rooted in deliberate choice. There is a form of opposition that rarely announces itself as an enemy. It does not threaten us openly, nor does it demand that we abandon our ambitions altogether. Instead, it speaks in a gentle voice, offering ease where effort is required and pleasure where patience is needed. It asks very little of us at first. It merely suggests that we rest a little longer, postpone a little further, and choose what is pleasant over what is necessary. Because of its quiet nature, many people fail to recognize it for what it is. They imagine their greatest obstacles to be failure, hardship, or lack of opportunity, while all the while comfort steadily weakens their resolve. Human beings naturally seek comfort. There is nothing surprising about this. We are drawn toward warmth rather than cold, certainty rather than risk, and ease rather than strain. Such tendencies are woven deeply into our nature. Yet the qualities that make life meaningful often grow in the opposite direction. Courage develops when fear is confronted. Strength develops when resistance is endured. Wisdom develops when difficult truths are faced. Growth, by its very nature, requires movement beyond what is comfortable. The danger of comfort is not that it feels pleasant. The danger is that it gradually convinces us that comfort should be the highest priority in life. Once that belief takes root, every challenge appears unnecessary and every sacrifice seems unreasonable. A person begins arranging their entire existence around avoiding discomfort. Decisions are no longer measured by what is right or beneficial but by what is easiest. This process rarely happens suddenly. Comfort advances by small degrees. One missed opportunity seems insignificant. One delayed task appears harmless. One avoided responsibility feels justified. Yet human character is shaped by repeated choices, not isolated moments. What begins as a temporary preference can become a permanent habit. Before long, a person finds themselves trapped not by external barriers but by patterns they willingly accepted. There is an interesting contradiction in the promises comfort makes. It offers relief, yet often creates greater burdens. Consider the student who avoids studying because entertainment feels more appealing. The immediate discomfort disappears, but anxiety grows as deadlines approach. Consider the individual who avoids difficult conversations because silence feels safer. Temporary ease is gained, but unresolved problems become heavier over time. Comfort frequently postpones discomfort rather than eliminating it. Many people assume that growth requires extraordinary acts of courage. More often, it requires the willingness to endure ordinary discomfort. Rising early when the bed feels inviting. Continuing a task when boredom appears. Practicing a skill when progress seems invisible. These moments rarely attract attention, yet they shape the direction of a life. The difference between stagnation and growth is often found in small decisions made repeatedly. The modern world provides endless opportunities to remain comfortable. Distraction is available at every moment. Entertainment requires almost no effort. Convenience surrounds us in countless forms. While these things are not inherently harmful, they create an environment where discomfort can be avoided more easily than ever before. As a result, many people become unfamiliar with struggle. They lose the ability to tolerate inconvenience, frustration, or delay. Yet some of the most valuable experiences in life cannot be obtained through comfort. Mastery requires practice. Meaningful relationships require vulnerability. Achievement requires persistence. Character requires sacrifice. None of these qualities flourish in an atmosphere where ease is treated as the highest good. They demand something more substantial than comfort can provide. A disciplined person does not necessarily enjoy discomfort. They simply understand its purpose. They recognize that temporary discomfort is often the price of long-term growth. They see beyond the immediate feeling and consider the future consequences of present choices. While others ask what feels easiest today, they ask what will matter tomorrow. The quiet influence of comfort becomes especially dangerous because it disguises itself as harmless. It rarely commands surrender, it merely suggests delay. It does not urge people to abandon their goals entirely, it encourages them to wait for a more convenient time. Yet lives are often shaped by what we repeatedly postpone. Dreams weaken through neglect. Abilities diminish through disuse. Potential remains unrealized through endless hesitation. Comfort asks for very little in any single moment, but over time it asks for almost everything. Human beings are often fascinated by dramatic transformations. We admire stories of sudden success, remarkable achievements, and extraordinary breakthroughs. There is something appealing about the idea that life can change in a single moment through one great decision or one powerful act of determination. Because of this, many people spend their lives searching for large opportunities while overlooking the significance of small actions. They assume that greatness is built through rare moments of intensity, when in reality it is more often shaped through ordinary acts repeated over long periods of time. One of the most persistent illusions is the belief that small choices do not matter. A person tells themselves that missing one day of practice is insignificant, that postponing one responsibility will make little difference, or that one unnecessary distraction cannot possibly affect the future. Viewed in isolation, these decisions may indeed appear harmless. Yet life is not constructed from isolated moments. It is constructed from patterns, and patterns emerge from repetition. A single drop of water seems powerless, yet countless drops can carve their way through stone. A single step appears insignificant, yet thousands of steps can carry a traveler across continents. The same principle applies to human character. Small actions accumulate quietly, often without attracting attention, until they eventually shape the direction of an entire life. The difficulty is that the results of small actions are rarely immediate. When a person chooses discipline today, there is often little visible reward. The effort may feel unnoticed and unimportant. Likewise, when a person chooses laziness or neglect, the consequences may not appear at once. This delay creates confusion. We naturally expect important causes to produce immediate effects. When they do not, we underestimate their significance. Consider the person who reads a few pages of a worthwhile book each day. The difference between reading and not reading seems almost invisible on a single evening. Yet after months or years, the gap becomes enormous. Knowledge expands gradually, understanding deepens, and perspective broadens. The transformation appears remarkable from a distance, though it was built through actions so small they were scarcely noticed at the time. The same is true of physical strength, professional skill, financial stability, and personal character. Rarely are these things created by a single grand effort. They are formed through countless decisions that seem unimportant when viewed individually. Every day offers opportunities to strengthen or weaken the habits that determine our future. There is a tendency within human nature to wait for perfect circumstances before taking meaningful action. People imagine they will begin once they possess greater confidence, more time, or stronger motivation. Yet waiting often becomes a habit in itself. The future they anticipate never arrives because they overlook the opportunities already present before them. A small action taken today is often more valuable than a perfect plan postponed indefinitely. This truth can be difficult to accept because it lacks drama. There is no excitement in performing ordinary tasks consistently. There is little applause for fulfilling responsibilities day after day. The world celebrates visible achievements, but rarely notices the countless small actions that made those achievements possible. Yet the hidden work remains the foundation upon which every lasting success is built. What makes small actions powerful is their ability to influence identity. Each choice sends a message to ourselves about the kind of person we are becoming. When we act with discipline, even in minor matters, we reinforce the belief that discipline is part of our character. When we repeatedly neglect what ought to be done, we strengthen habits of avoidance and excuse-making. The future is not merely shaped by what we accomplish, but by who we become through our daily decisions. Many people overestimate the importance of major events and underestimate the influence of ordinary days. They imagine their future will be determined by rare opportunities, while ignoring the fact that most of life is lived in routine. The habits practiced in ordinary moments eventually determine how a person responds when significant opportunities appear. A disciplined life is not built through occasional acts of greatness. It is built through consistent faithfulness in small things. The person who learns to keep simple promises to themselves develops a strength that extends into every area of life. The individual who performs necessary tasks regardless of mood gradually acquires reliability. Character grows quietly beneath the surface through actions that appear too small to matter. The future often arrives disguised as a series of ordinary choices made today. One of the most common misunderstandings about discipline is the belief that disciplined people somehow possess better feelings than everyone else. We imagine that they wake each morning filled with enthusiasm, eager to embrace difficult tasks, and prepared to overcome every challenge without resistance. From a distance, their consistency appears effortless. Yet this impression is often far removed from reality. The disciplined person is not necessarily someone who feels differently. More often, they are someone who has learned not to allow feelings to determine their actions. Human emotions are valuable gifts. They enrich experience, deepen relationships, and bring color to life. Yet they were never intended to serve as the sole foundation for decision-making. Feelings change constantly. They rise and fall with circumstances, energy levels, disappointments, successes, and countless influences we scarcely notice. A person may feel confident one day and uncertain the next, motivated in the morning and discouraged by evening. To place complete trust in such shifting conditions is to surrender control of one's direction to forces that cannot be relied upon. There is a peculiar tendency within human nature to treat feelings as commands rather than experiences. When we feel tired, we assume we should stop. When we feel unmotivated, we assume we should wait. When we feel uncertain, we assume we should postpone action until confidence returns. In doing so, we grant temporary emotions authority over permanent goals. The result is a life guided not by conviction but by fluctuation. Imagine a captain steering a ship across a vast ocean. Storms may arise, winds may change direction, and waves may become rough. None of these conditions alter the destination itself. The captain acknowledges them, adapts to them, and continues forward. In much the same way, disciplined individuals recognize their feelings without allowing those feelings to dictate the course of their lives. They understand that emotions are conditions to be navigated, not masters to be obeyed. This distinction becomes especially important when pursuing worthwhile goals. Nearly every meaningful achievement involves periods of discomfort. There are days when effort feels difficult, progress appears invisible, and enthusiasm is nowhere to be found. During such moments, feelings often suggest abandoning the task altogether. They whisper that continuing is unnecessary, that rest can wait until tomorrow, and that one exception will make little difference. The challenge is that these suggestions often sound reasonable. They do not present themselves as obvious mistakes. They arrive disguised as harmless compromises. Yet repeated often enough, they become habits. A person who continually follows feelings eventually discovers that feelings have led them in circles. What seemed like freedom becomes a form of captivity. Discipline offers an alternative path. It begins with the recognition that feelings and actions are not inseparably connected. A person can feel tired and still work. They can feel afraid and still act courageously. They can feel discouraged and still continue moving forward. This truth is both simple and profound. It reveals that emotions influence behavior, but do not have absolute authority over it. Many of the qualities people admire most are built upon this principle. Courage is not the absence of fear, but action despite fear. Perseverance is not the absence of discouragement, but persistence despite discouragement. Self-discipline is not the absence of resistance, but obedience to what is necessary despite resistance. In each case, the defining feature is not the feeling itself, but the decision made in response to it. There is also a surprising freedom that emerges when a person stops waiting to feel ready. Much anxiety comes from believing that action requires perfect emotional conditions. Once this belief is abandoned, progress becomes possible under a much wider range of circumstances. Work can begin even when enthusiasm is lacking. Responsibilities can be fulfilled even when motivation is absent. Growth can continue even during difficult seasons. The disciplined person understands that feelings are often unreliable predictors of what should be done. A task may feel unpleasant and still be necessary. A temptation may feel attractive and still be harmful. An obligation may feel burdensome and still be worthwhile. Decisions based solely on emotion frequently lead away from long-term good, because emotions are concerned primarily with the present moment. Maturity involves learning to recognize this difference. It means accepting that feelings deserve acknowledgement, but not unquestioned obedience. It means understanding that the value of an action is not determined by how pleasant it feels in the moment. It means developing the ability to choose what is right, useful, and necessary even when every emotion argues for something easier. There is a peculiar admiration in the modern world for intensity. We are drawn to stories of dramatic effort, sudden transformation, and extraordinary bursts of achievement. We celebrate the individual who works relentlessly for a short period, who pushes themselves beyond ordinary limits, and who appears capable of accomplishing in a few days what others might attempt in months. Such stories are exciting because they appeal to our desire for rapid progress. They suggest that greatness can be reached through occasional moments of exceptional effort. Yet life has a way of revealing a quieter truth. Consistency, though less impressive at first glance, often possesses far greater power than intensity. Human beings frequently overestimate what can be accomplished in a short time and underestimate what can be accomplished through steady effort over many years. We become impatient with gradual progress because it lacks the drama we crave. A single day of extraordinary work feels significant. 100 ordinary days of disciplined effort often feel unremarkable. Yet it is those ordinary days that quietly shape the future. Consider the growth of a tree. No observer standing beside it for a single afternoon would notice any change. Day after day it appears almost exactly the same. Yet beneath the surface growth continues. Roots deepen, branches strengthen, and life steadily advances. Years later the result becomes unmistakable. The tree's strength was not built through moments of sudden expansion, but through continuous development that occurred almost unnoticed. The same principle applies to human achievement. A person who studies diligently for a short time may gain temporary knowledge, but the one who studies consistently develops lasting understanding. A person who exercises intensely for a few weeks may see immediate results, but the one who maintains steady habits acquires enduring strength. Success in most areas of life depends less upon extraordinary effort and more upon repeated action. One reason intensity is so appealing is that it produces immediate emotional satisfaction. It feels productive. It creates the impression of rapid movement. After a day of intense effort, a person often experiences a sense of accomplishment that is difficult to ignore. Consistency, by contrast, rarely produces such dramatic feelings. It asks for patience. It requires trust in results that may not be visible for a long time. Because of this, many people abandon consistency in favor of intensity. Yet intensity often contains a hidden weakness. It depends heavily upon emotion, enthusiasm, and favorable circumstances. A person may work with great energy when inspiration is present, but what happens when that inspiration disappears? What happens when life becomes difficult, schedules become crowded, or motivation begins to fade? Effort that depends entirely upon emotional momentum rarely survives these challenges. Consistency operates according to a different principle. It does not demand perfection. It does not require extraordinary energy every day. Instead, it asks for persistence. It values regular action more than occasional brilliance. While intensity seeks dramatic progress, consistency seeks sustainable progress. It understands that small gains repeated over time eventually become substantial achievements. There is also a humility in consistency that intensity often lacks. Intensity sometimes encourages a person to focus on what they can accomplish today. Consistency encourages them to consider what they can sustain tomorrow, next month, and next year. It recognizes that lasting success is not measured by how fast one begins, but by how faithfully one continues. Many failures occur not because people lack talent or opportunity, but because they underestimate the importance of persistence. They begin with enthusiasm and abandon their efforts when progress slows. They mistake temporary excitement for commitment. They assume that because results are not immediate, their efforts are ineffective. Yet meaningful growth often occurs beneath the surface long before visible rewards appear. A disciplined life is built upon the willingness to continue when novelty has disappeared. The excitement of a new goal eventually fades. The emotional energy that accompanies a fresh beginning gradually diminishes. At that point, consistency becomes the determining factor. It carries a person forward when excitement can no longer do so. What appears insignificant on a single day becomes powerful when repeated hundreds of times. A small effort maintained consistently can achieve what occasional intensity never will. The individual who advances steadily, even at a modest pace, often surpasses those who move rapidly for a season and then stop. Progress accumulates through repetition. Character develops through repetition. Mastery develops through repetition. The future is rarely shaped by what we do once. It is shaped by what we do again and again, long after the excitement of beginning has disappeared. When people speak of freedom, they often imagine the absence of restrictions. They picture a life in which every desire can be followed, every impulse can be satisfied, and every choice can be made without limitation. Freedom, in this view, becomes the ability to do whatever one wishes whenever one wishes. It is an attractive idea because it promises independence from restraint and responsibility. Yet experience frequently reveals a contradiction hidden within this belief. The person who follows every impulse is often far less free than they appear. Human beings possess countless desires. Some are noble and beneficial, others are temporary, selfish, or destructive. These desires do not always agree with one another. A person may desire health while also desiring comfort. They may desire financial stability while also desiring unnecessary spending. They may desire meaningful achievement while also desiring constant entertainment. Life often becomes a contest between competing impulses, each demanding attention and satisfaction. Many people assume that freedom consists of obeying whichever desire feels strongest at a particular moment. Yet this approach creates a strange form of dependence. The individual who cannot resist every passing urge becomes controlled by those urges. Their choices are no longer guided by reason, conviction, or purpose, but by whatever impulse happens to be most powerful in the present moment. Consider a ship without a rudder. It may drift wherever the currents carry it, moving freely across the water with no visible restrictions. Yet such movement is not genuine freedom. It is directionless wandering. The ship is not choosing its course. It is being carried by forces it cannot control. In much the same way, a person who lacks self-control may appear free on the surface while actually being governed by appetites, habits, and emotions. This misunderstanding arises because restraint is often mistaken for limitation. We assume that discipline restricts freedom because it requires saying no to certain desires. Yet every meaningful freedom depends upon some form of self-control. A musician gains the freedom to create beautiful music through years of disciplined practice. An athlete gains the freedom to perform at a high level through disciplined training. A scholar gains the freedom of knowledge through disciplined study. In each case, freedom is not achieved by avoiding discipline but through it. There is a profound difference between being able to do something and being unable to stop doing it. The first reflects freedom, the second reflects captivity. A person who can enjoy entertainment and then set it aside possesses freedom. A person who cannot stop consuming it even when it interferes with important responsibilities does not. A person who can spend money wisely when necessary possesses freedom. A person who is unable to resist every impulse to spend is governed by desires rather than governing them. One of the greatest deceptions in life is the belief that self-control diminishes happiness. In reality, many of the frustrations people experience arise precisely because they lack it. Impulsive decisions often produce regret. Uncontrolled habits frequently create consequences that limit future choices. The pursuit of immediate pleasure can gradually erode long-term well-being. What begins as freedom to indulge eventually becomes dependence. Self-discipline serves as a safeguard against this process. It enables a person to choose according to values rather than impulses. It creates the ability to delay gratification, endure temporary discomfort, and remain faithful to long-term goals. These abilities may appear restrictive in the moment, but they often expand possibilities in the future. The individual who develops self-control acquires a remarkable kind of independence. They are no longer entirely at the mercy of changing emotions or passing desires. They can act according to what they know is right, even when they do not feel inclined to do so. They can resist temptations that would otherwise direct their behavior. They become capable of shaping their lives rather than merely reacting to circumstances. There is a certain dignity in this form of freedom. It recognizes that human beings are more than collections of impulses. They possess the capacity to choose, to evaluate, and to govern themselves. Discipline strengthens this capacity. It transforms freedom from a vague feeling into a practical reality. The disciplined person is not free because they have removed all limits from their life. They are free because they have learned which limits preserve what matters most. The ability to command oneself is often the foundation upon which every other form of freedom rests.